So one of the things that's pretty mystifying about abusers is that for some reason it doesn't seem to be enough that they are doing what they're doing, taking what they're taking, that they are being abusive and extracting from the victim what they want. They also are so focused on making the victim agree with them, making the victim think what they think, believe what they believe, and essentially agree to what the abuser is doing. And it's like, why? Why is this? Why do we need to be doing this? And the reason is it's to shift the burden of moral calculus from the abuser and what they're doing and their wrong actions to the victim. Because if the victim agrees to it, the victim agreed to it. I'm not doing anything wrong. The victim agreed to it. You see a similar kind of thought process when, for example, the Me Too thing was kicking off, and there were women stepping forward talking about how they had been taken advantage of, and the casting couch power, abusive power, and before the Me Too movement, it very much was, well, you did it. It was so wrong. Why'd you do it? You got something from it. Shifting the burden of moral calculus. Um, or if somebody becomes some kind of a celebrity and now they're getting harassed, maybe not just by paparazzi, but by like the public. Well, you agreed to it. You knew what you were getting into. Shifting the burden of moral calculus from the people committing the problematic or abusive acts to the person who's the recipient. They can shift that in their minds if they can get you to agree to it. Uh, so my story time example of this happened recently with a person who is targeting a young woman in an ESL class. And so we were having a conversation, and I did not, again, sometimes you start the conversation and you don't realize where it's going to go. And it turns out, so he's some sort of like one of the assistant teachers or teachers in this ESL class to help people who are not from this country become better English speakers. So often, maybe someone not in a position of power. And this particular woman was in like a tough situation. And so his perspective was like, oh, well, I love her and I love how she, does XYZ, and I want to save her, and she needs help, and I'm gonna do this and that. And he's doing all and he's talking about all of this stuff. And she's like 36 and he's 61. He's 61. So there's like a very broad age range. And I was just looking at him in his face like, I'm sorry, I'm confused. You said you love this person. Do you know this person? And also, if you love this person, why would you want to steal their youth? You're in two completely different stages of life. And she might want to have like a family. With someone who's younger that she's not going to have to like take care of in 10 years. And he looked at me dead in my face and was like, well, it's her choice. If she chooses it, and I was like, I'm flashing back to every single time I've seen this work out. And again, this is not just a heteronormative thing. You can see this also in the queer community. You can also see it with women. I've turned down personally a lot of um attempts from younger men to get in relationships with me. And I think at one point I was like in my 40s, and the guy's doing the same thing. Like, hey, just a number. It's nothing but a number. And I looked and I was just like, okay, why would I take away you? We're in completely different cycles of life. Like, I have a child. I'm doing kid stuff. You're living a young kind of bachelor life, which is exactly appropriate for where you should be at 21. Um, you know, th- this is we're not, and also I already have a kid. I'm tired. I'm not doing that. So anyway, but you can end up with a dynamic where it's, like the older woman and the younger man or something like that. And so I'm just, we know there's a power differential there. But but when that came out of his mouth, I was just like, that's it. That's what abusers. That's how they think. They don't see themselves as predatory. They don't see themselves as doing anything wrong or bad, especially if they can get you to agree to it. So not only are they harming you, but you agreed to it. Therefore, their hands are clean. So anyway, if you are in this dynamic with an abuser and they're pushing hard on getting you to agree, be so careful because they're likely using that as internal justification for why what they're doing is not wrong. Because if it was so bad, wouldn't you have left? If it was so bad, wouldn't you have done something different? Why did you stay? Why did you stay if it was so bad? Victims hear that all the time. And so in the moment, an abuser might be saying to you, "Oh no, I deserve another chance," or "I didn't mean it," or, well, if this hadn't happened, then I wouldn't have done X, Y, Z. You said you loved me, blah, 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 right? And so in that moment, they've temporarily put themselves in a one down position. And so you think you're making a decision from a position of power and that things will be different moving forward. And then they get back into doing the abusive behaviors and you're sitting there confused like, wait, we already talked about this. And you're thinking to yourself, you acknowledged what you did was not okay. Well, if it was that bad, you would have left. If I was so bad, why did you stay? And so you're sitting there like, wait, but you literally manipulated me into staying. And it becomes this mind game. It becomes a mind fuck for the victim. And this is yet another reason added to the pile of why victims get so confused, so spun about in these relationship dynamics. And it doesn't have to be just romantic relationships. It could be like a best friend, or it could be like a parent, and they're giving you the but family. And the ground seems to shift consistently under your feet and you don't know why. A lot of why is because they're just telling you what'll get you to do what they want in the moment, and then they'll use that against you later as having agreed in some way to what they're doing. Anyway, I hope this makes sense, and I'll talk to you next time.